And now it is time for the 10th chapter of the second book of A Tale of Two Cities. The name of the book is The Golden Thread. The name of this chapter is Two Promises. More months to the number of 12 had come and gone, and Mr. Charles Darnay was established in England as a hired teacher of the French language who was conversant with French literature. In this age, he would have been a professor. In that age, he was a tutor. He read with young men who could find any leisure and interest for the study of a living tongue spoken all over the world, and he cultivated a taste for its stores of knowledge and fancy. He could write of them, besides, in sound English, and render them into sound English. Such masters were not at that time easily found. Princes that had been, and kings that were to be, were not yet of the teacher class, and no ruined nobility had dropped out of Tellson's ledgers to turn cooks and carpenters. As a tutor whose attainments made the student's way unusually pleasant and profitable, and as an elegant translator who brought something to his work besides mere dictionary knowledge, young Mr. Darnay soon became known and encouraged. He was well acquainted, moreover, with the circumstances of his country, and those were of ever-growing interest. So, with great perspective and untrying industry, he prospered. In London, he had expected neither to walk on pavements of gold, nor to lie on beds of roses. If he had had any such exalted expectation, he would not have prospered. He had expected labor, and he found it, and did it, and made the best of it. In this his propensity consisted. In this his prosperity consisted. A certain portion of his time was passed at Cambridge, where he read with undergraduates as a sort of tolerated smuggler who drove a contraband trade in European languages, instead of conveying Greek and Latin through the customs house. The rest of his time he passed in London. Now, from the days when it was always summer in Eden, to those days when it was mostly winter in fallen latitudes, the world of a man has invariably gone one way, Charles Darnay's way, the way of the love of a woman. He had loved Lucy Manette from the hour of his danger. He had never heard a sound so sweet and dear as the sound of her compassionate voice. He had never seen a face so tenderly beautiful as hers when it was confronted with his own on the edge of the grave that had been dug for him. But he had not yet spoken to her on the subject. The assassination at the deserted chateau, far away beyond the heaving water, and the long, long dusty roads, the solid stone chateau, which had itself become the mere mist of a dream, had been done a year, and he had never yet, by so much as a single spoken word, disclosed to her the state of his heart. That he had his reasons for this he knew full well. It was again a summer day when, lately arrived in London from his college occupation, he turned into the quiet corner in Soho, bent on seeking an opportunity of opening his mind to Dr. Manette. It was the close of the summer day, and he knew Lucy to be out with Miss Pross. He found the doctor reading in his armchair at a window. The energy which had once supported him under his old sufferings and aggravated their sharpness had been gradually restored to him. He was now a very energetic man indeed, with great firmness of purpose, strength of resolution, and vigor of action. In his recovered energy he was something of a little fitful and sudden, as he had at first been in the exercise of his other recovered faculties. But this had never been frequently observable, and had grown more and more rare. He studied much, slept little, sustained a great deal of fatigue with ease, and was equally cheerful. To him now entered Charles Darnay, at sight of whom he laid aside his book and held out his hand. "Charles Darnay, I rejoice to see you. We have been counting on your return these 3 or 4 days past. Mr. Stryver and Sidney Carton were both here yesterday, and both made you out to be more than due." "I am obliged to them for their interest in the matter," he answered, a little coldly, as to them, though very warmly to the doctor. "Miss Manette is well," said the doctor, as he stopped short, "and your return will delight us all. She has gone out on some household matters, but will soon be home. Dr. Manette, I knew she was from home. I took the opportunity of her being from home to beg to speak to you." There was a blank silence. "Yes," the doctor said with evident constraint. "Bring your chair here and speak on." He complied as to the chair, but appeared to find the speaking on less easy. "I have had the happiness, Dr. Manette, of being so intimate here," so he at length began, "for some year and a half, that I hope the topic on which I am about to touch may not—" He was stayed by the doctor putting out his hand to stop him. When he had kept it so little a while, he said, drawing it back, "Is Lucy the topic?" "She is." "It is hard for me to speak of her at any time. It is very hard for me to hear her spoken of in that tone of yours, Charles Darnay. It is a tone of fervent admiration, true homage, and deep love, Dr. Manette," he said deferentially. There was another blank silence before her father rejoined, "I believe it. I do you justice, I believe it." His constraint was so manifest, and it was so manifest, too, that it originated in an unwillingness to approach the subject, that Charles Darnay hesitated. "Shall I go on, sir?" Another blank. "Yes, go on." "You anticipate what I would say, though you cannot know how earnestly I say it, how earnestly I feel it, without knowing my secret heart, and the hopes and fears and anxieties with which it has long been laden. Dear Dr. Manette, I love your daughter fondly, dearly, disinterestedly, devoutly. If ever there were a love in the world, I love her. You have loved yourself. Let your old love speak for me." The doctor sat with his face turned away and his eyes bent on the ground. At the last words he stretched out his hand again hurriedly and cried, "Not that, sir. Let that be. I abjure you. Do not recall that." His cry was so like a cry of actual pain that it rang in Charles Darnay's ears long after he had ceased. He motioned with the hand he had extended, and it seemed to be an appeal to Darnay to pause. The latter so received it and remained silent. "I ask your pardon," said the doctor in a subdued tone. After some moments, "I do not doubt your loving Lucy. You may be satisfied of it." He turned toward him in his chair, but did not look at him or raise his eyes. His chin drooped upon his hand, and his white hair overshadowed his face. "Have you spoken to Lucy?" "No." "Nor written?" "Never." "It would be ungenerous to affect not to know that your self-denial is to be referred to your consideration for her father. Her father thanks you." He offered his hand, but his eyes did not go with it. "I know," said Darnay respectfully, "how I can fail to know, Dr. Manette, I who have seen you together from day to day, that between you and Miss Manette there is an affection so unusual, so touching, so belonging to circumstances in which it has been nurtured, that it can have few parallels, even in the tenderness between a father and child. I know, Dr. Manette. How can I fail to know that mingled with the affection and duty of a daughter who has become a woman, there is in her heart toward you all the love and reliance of infancy itself? I know that, as in her childhood she had no parent, so she is now devoted to you with all the constancy and fervor of her present years and character, united in the trustfulness and attachment of the early days in which you were lost to her. I know perfectly well that if you had been restored to her from the world beyond this life, you could hardly be invested in her sight with a more sacred character than that in which you are always with her. I know that when she is clinging to you, the hands of baby girl and woman all in one are round your neck. I know that in loving you, she sees and loves her mother at her own age. sees and loves you at my age, loves her mother broken-hearted, loves you through your dreadful trial and your blessed restoration. I have known this night and day, since I have known you in your home. Father sat silent, with his face bent down. His breathing was a little quickened, but he repressed all other signs of agitation. Dear Dr. Manette, always knowing this, always seeing her, and you with this hallowed light about you, I have forborne, and forborne as long as it was in the nature of man to do it. I have felt, and do even now feel, that to bring my love, even mine, between you, is to touch your history with something not quite so good as